In this episode of Smart Humans, we do our year in review and predictions for 2026. We have special guest co founder Vincent, Adam Katz. Where are we headed with those really expensive collectibles and pieces of art? It's going to be an exciting year ahead, and we cover all of that and more in this episode.
Welcome to Smart Humans with Slava Rubin, presented by Vincent. In this alt investing podcast, Slava talks to amazing minds about their investment journey and finds out what it takes to make it in the markets. And now, here's your host and smart human, Slava Rubin.
Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of Smart Humans. And today's episode, I'm excited that we'll be talking about our predictions for 2026. 2025 was pretty crazy, lots to cover, but more important is what's happening next. With me today is special guest Adam Katz, co-founder of Vincent. Welcome, Adam.
Hey, Slava. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So we're going to dive right into it. So how did you see 2025 play out in the world of collectibles and art?
Well, we'll start with art. It was a pretty strong rebound by the end of the year. The fall sales were better than expected. There were some massive sales. I mean, you had a Klimt painting that became the most expensive work of modern art ever. You had a Frida Kahlo that was the most expensive work ever by a woman artist. The art fairs were strong. Art Basel Miami was huge to close the year. We saw the mid-market, low-market stuff see more demand. Younger collectors are getting in. I think there's a lot of good spillover from how strong the economy was at the top end of the market. You know, with the stock market gains, there are going to be more people that have a little bit more money to spend on things like art. Art tends to be a lot more correlated with how well the economy is doing and how well the stock market is doing, because it's going to be people that have discretionary income to spend on these things. I mean, there was a $10 million gold toilet, like that says it all right there. So I think for 2026, you're going to see more of the same. You know, I mean, it's been a steady rebound. There was definitely a bottoming out a few years ago, and 2025 was a good, solid rebound year. I think you're going to see more of the same. I think as long as the stock market continues to do well, the art market will continue to rebound. I do think that one factor that could be, it's not as big a deal as some of the other macro factors, but the crypto market is, you know, you saw last year there was the, multi-million-dollar banana that was bought by a crypto guy. And because crypto was pumping, we'll get to that next, but, Bitcoin was down on the year. It's been recovering a little bit. Like, how well is that going to do? If it does really well, I think you're going to see some spillover in art. If it doesn't do as well, I don't think it's going to affect the market that much, but it is something to keep an eye on. I do think that there's going to be a pretty robust market for 5 and 6 figure artworks, people who are starting their collections, wealthy people who are starting their collections. And I think that you're starting to see this great wealth transfer from the boomers down to Gen X and eventually to the millennials. You're seeing a lot of estate sales. You're seeing a lot of, this is where the Klimt came from. You're seeing a lot of very, very high value artwork that's going to get transferred. And if the auction houses can do a good job of managing that supply, it should do well. You don't want a glut of these things and have them not sell. But as long as they're spaced out and you have these kind of high profile sales, it's good for the market. It's good for publicity, and it gets more people interested.
So overall, you sound somewhat positive for 26. Is that fair for art?
Yeah, I would say slightly bullish. I don't think it's going to be a breakout year. I think it may be marginally better than 25, which was a good year. Not A plus. We're not talking like pandemic frothy kind of market, but I think solid gains, which is good, and it's what people are looking for.
And are there specific artists that you would recommend to lean into for 26, or do you think that 26 might break out?
I don't have specific artists. I think if you've got YOLO money, to use your term from the last section, ultra contemporary artists have seen their markets crash in the last couple of years. They didn't really recover last year, but you have to expect it will happen sometime, especially the more prominent ones. And you can look at, people who are getting exhibited at major museums. You can look at who's selling at art fairs, things like that. It's sort of like prospects in collectibles and sports. And I do think maybe it's not this year, maybe it's not even next year, but there will be a recovery of that market at some point, especially as the market becomes younger.
Nice. Any other thoughts for where you'd focus with art in 26?
No, I think we can move on to collectibles.
Amazing. So talk to me about what you saw in 25. That was interesting.
25, we had, like with every year, there are massive sales. We had the most expensive comic book ever sold. It was like $9 million for a Superman 1. We had the most expensive sports card ever, which was a Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant dual logo man card. It sold for almost 13 million. There were some big entertainment memorabilia sales. There were big Pokemon sales. WNBA cards broke out, both in value, but also in like just the amount that are getting graded. I think more than double got graded than the year before. You're seeing, I think, a broadening of the collectibles market. It's not just sports cards. It's not just sports memorabilia. It's not just, the mainstays. You're seeing, it's not just watches and luxury items. I think you're seeing it broaden out. And so that you see that truly unique items, regardless of whether it's a music memorabilia thing or an entertainment memorabilia thing, I think they're seeing a lot of demand, especially at the high end of the market. So that I think was the story of 2025 for me.
And how do you translate that for 2026? What do you see happening? Where do you position yourself?
I think that you're going to see that trend continue for sure. It's something that we talked about last year and in the same podcast, and happened in 2025. I think it'll continue to happen in 2026. It is an old tale, but scarcity, desirability, that's what drives these things, because there aren't inherent value to collectibles. It's all about desirability. And if you have the one thing that nobody else can have, that's going to lead to bidding wars. It's going to lead to, especially when you have more and more money pouring into the market. For everyday investors, I think you're looking at broader trends, women's sports cards. I think 2026 is going to see a lot more demand for soccer with the World Cup coming to the US. That's already started. Messi cards have become more expensive. You've seen a pop in those in anticipation of this, because, I think people are expecting there to be a lot of excitement over the World Cup, but I think they're underestimating it. It's going to be crazy, the 2 months this summer with the World Cup in the US. So I think that's going to bring a lot of eyeballs to soccer, a lot of eyeballs to soccer players, soccer memorabilia. I think that that's going to be one of the most interesting things to look at in the collectibles space this year.
And beyond the World Cup, are there any other major trends or events to look out for 26 to try to play around for collectibles?
I personally, I talked about him last year, Victor Wembanyama, Wemby. He's on his way, if not already the most impactful basketball player in the world. His market has exploded. And, if he stays healthy, which is a big if, they're definitely contenders to win the title. And if they make the finals or they win the finals, his market is going to explode. He's an international player from France. He's got global appeal. He's super young. He could be the best player in the NBA for the next decade. And collectors are definitely responding to that. Shohei Ohtani, obviously the biggest baseball player in the world. They just won the World Series again. Those two, I think, are the biggest names. Caitlin Clark had a down year. She was hurt. I could see a recovery there.
Funny enough, she's like the first American you mentioned.
Yeah.
Looks like, Messi's from Argentina.
Yeah.
Wembanyama is from France. Shohei's from Japan. It's just like really interesting.
Collecting is going global. That's where we're going with this. We're going to have, you just look at Ohtani's stuff. It's not just Americans who are interested in that. Like, his market in Japan is enormous.
Speaking of Japan, I just heard about the, Logan Paul is looking to sell his like massive Pokemon card.
Pokemon? Yeah. Well, that's the other thing is Pokemon, the card ladder Pokemon index doubled last year. The number of Pokemon cards that were graded were, I think it was like 16 million or something. I can't remember the exact number, but it was a crazy amount and a huge increase. Pokemon is big, especially among the younger generations, which are just getting into collecting or just starting to get disposable income. And yeah, Logan Paul is selling something that will probably end up being the most expensive Pokemon card ever. I think it doesn't end up hammering until, I think, March, maybe like mid-February.
What's the prediction on did he buy it for 5?
I think he bought it for like 3, and he's hoping to get 5, or he thinks it's going to be minimum 5, maybe 10. And obviously that's going to bring a lot of attention to the space. I wouldn't say I'm bearish on Pokemon at all, but I'm not sure that it's going to double again this year. That's a big ask, but I do think that it should continue to get a lot of attention.
With my kids as a proxy, I'm still very bullish on Pokemon. I'm not saying it's going to double either. I think that is super fast growth, but close your eyes 10 years from now, I think Pokemon's up a lot, a lot.
Yeah. I think one other interesting thing that is related is just sort of the slow churn of the generational interests, right? Luxury items like watches, wine, handbags, jewelry, they had a relatively difficult 2025, not as difficult as 2024. Wine and watches were down double digits in 2024, down more like 5% in 2025. But I don't see as much interest from the younger generations in those items, and perhaps they will develop those interests as they get older. But, things like Pokemon, things like, collectibles, I think are of more interest right now. And I think you're starting to maybe see a shift from certain sectors to other sectors that could continue in 2026.
I'll ask you one question just to put you on the spot.
Yeah.
So Victor Wembanyama, Shohei Ohtani, kind of obvious.
Yes.
Give me a hot take on who you think a year from now. I'm not going to call it the next Victor Wembanyama because that's not fair. But who do you think is the next up-and-comer that is a bit of a surprise for the random person listening that, wow, this person became so popular, is now worth so much more?
I mean, I think that coming into the season, you might say Cooper Flagg, who's the presumptive rookie of the year. His team's not very good. I don't think that it's going to be a big year for his market, but he's somebody to keep an eye on down the road. He's not quite the prospect that Wemby is, but he's pretty generational. And when his team starts getting good, and as you said, he's like the great American hope. So there's a lot of room to grow there.
Awesome. Love the hot take. I'm pretty bullish on Flagg. It's January here as we produce this, so it's pretty fascinating what's going to happen in the next 360 days. So thank you, Adam, for joining.
Thanks for having me, Slava.
Smart Humans with Slava Rubin is a podcast brought to you by the team at Vincent. Any data, text, or other content in this podcast is provided as general market information and not as investment advice. Past performance is not necessarily an indicator of future results. For more information on alternative investing, check out Vincent at www.withvincent.com.